Oh, hi! I can't even tell you how excited I am to be in a sweater right now. It is before 7 o'clock in the morning, and I did specifically wake up early to enjoy the 50-degree weather before it gets too hot today, because it's September 1st. It's not technically fall yet, but I am mentally in Halloween mode. And speaking of it being September, I discovered an amazing sounding hashtag on Instagram called Secondhand September, where I don't know what everyone else's use for it will be. Maybe I should look this up and see who actually started the hashtag and what their intention is for it, because I know how I'm going to use it. I just want to make sure I'm not like co-opting it or something. Oh, so there's like a whole competition going along with this, and it's no buy new clothes for 30 days. It's encouraging people, if you're gonna go shopping, to go to a thrift store. Cool. That's really neat. I'm not a huge clothing shopper. I know that sounds bonkers for someone who's constantly making things, but I don't tend to go on shopping sprees or anything. I do have a lot of garments in this room right here that are intended to get altered for me to wear them. So I don't want to say I don't have a lot of clothes, because I do. What I'm trying to say is I don't go out to the mall or anything. There have been times in the past where I've gone to Target and bought 3 or 4 basic V-neck shirts or camisoles at Walmart or something while I'm trying to buy something else there. And I think that all falls under the fast fashion category. So that's the kind of shit I'm cutting out, and I'm gonna make my own basics going forward, where it's always felt easier, and those tend to be the cheapest things to buy, but that also means those probably weren't made ethically. And also, they fall apart, which is kind of the point of them, which is so fucked. They're made to not last so that you go buy more of them. So anyways, today we're gonna be taking this super rad fitting dress. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that this fits me this well, because it was a thrifted dress I bought 6 or 7 years ago. It probably cost me $2 to $3 and was also originally a Charlotte Russe dress that someone had donated to a Goodwill or Savers or something. It used to have straps, but they were so far out to the side, which is extra surprising because I'm very broad-chested, broad shoulders, and the fact that the straps still felt like they were set too wide on me makes me wonder what body shape this was made for, although it's always some buck wild amalgamation, middle ground, least common denominator, not realistic measurements and proportion type of body. So yes, the fit is great. I've always loved how this fits, other than the straps, which I took off ages ago. The thing about this dress is, though I do like a rockabilly aesthetic as much as the next gal that grew up going to Warped Tour and shit, but cherry print, it ain't me. Also, this has an invisible zipper at the back, which I have found have more issues than other zippers, especially if it's on a cheaply made garment like this. They're just a bitch, and I don't like installing them, and I don't like having them on garments. They're just a pain in the ass across the board. My hands are too big to fuck with this tiny little toggle. I can't. So on one of my more recent thrifting adventures, I found this amazing plaid with just the best color palette. I love it so much. It's a huge maxi skirt. I knew that there was a lot of potential with this. It's not full wool. I don't really understand what this fabric is. I actually expected it to melt when I was pressing it out, but it seemed to go fine. But it's definitely some synthetic something going on there. And yeah, I did all the prep work yesterday so that I could knock out construction today. I spent a good chunk of time seam ripping everything because this fits like a glove. I wanted to use the pattern exactly how it was made, so every piece is completely intact. I tore apart every bit of thread on there, which is also very therapeutic for me. I enjoy seam ripping things like that, as long as it's coming apart nicely. Some of the seams I was able to just rip apart. Something I find helpful if I have to do a lot of seam ripping when there's serging involved too, is I'll look for the order the serging was done in. So it looks like the side seams were done first, and then attaching the bodice to the skirt was done. So you kind of reverse engineer it. It's all coming apart, so it doesn't really matter what order you do it in, but that's how I operate when I'm seam ripping something. And then I unpicked any of the darts that were on the bodice piece and pressed everything out and marked it all. So I have lots of tiny little notes. I was thinking of using the fabric for something else, but a lot of the pieces, especially for the bodice, are too small to even make like a zipper bag or something, and the direction of the fabric would be sideways and the print doesn't look as good that way. So most of the pieces are marked, and I'm just going to use that as a pattern instead of transferring it over to the paper. If you do want to use your fabric for something else, just trace all of that onto paper, and then you have a permanent set of patterns that you don't have to worry about. And you get to upcycle that original fabric for something else. It's a win-win for everybody. So since I didn't have to alter any of the pattern pieces because everything fits so well already, I just laid all of those pieces on top with pattern weights and pins and cut everything out of the plaid fabric, and then made sure I had all my pieces by laying it out like this. And then because this plaid fabric is the tiniest bit scratchy, I cut out all the bodice pieces out of a plain neutral green fabric. Also, if you can see on this, I also clipped them while I was cutting the fabric out in the first place to mark the seam points of the darts. And then I just took a pencil or some chalk to mark the end point of the darts. I think doing a partial lining like this, it's called a facing. I also got a zipper that's as long, if not longer, than the invisible one that was in there. This is just a regular ass polyester zipper. And I got some complimentary bias tape. The other thing I'm doing that the original dress did not have is I'm cutting out pieces of interfacing, because this plaid is a very loose weave and I don't want any of that coming apart, as well as being a lot stretchier than the original fabric, so it won't be as form-fitting without some kind of reinforcement like this. So it's just going to shape better, I think. And it's not a really thick interfacing, it's a pretty lightweight one. Super important that you remember to only iron the interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric. Okay, everything is fully prepped and accounted for. Let's start sewing. First things first is we're going to sew the darts. If you've never done this before, I just made those two little nips on the edge of the fabric, and I have my end point marked up here. Fold it right sides together. You're gonna line up those little notches, so that's right there. Pin it if you need to. You can mark with a couple pins, and then you fold along until you find your end point, which is that mark right there. You can actually draw the line so it's easier to follow. I would hope at this point I can do a straight line okay, but you want like a straight line. And then when I get to the end point of a dart, so that there's no puckering or anything, I sew past it. I kind of overshoot it so that there's extra thread hanging off, because I always get a weird shape when I back tack, so I will have some extra and then tie it all off. All the darts are sewn now, and you can see it really changes the shape of the pieces, but it doesn't look very good right now. So we're going to press these out. For the darts on the side, I'm going to press them down. I'm hoping the interfacing is going to help this fabric hold a pressing. Whatever this plaid material is made out of, it really doesn't want to listen to me that well. Well, that doesn't look too bad, I suppose, right? Or do these go up? I can never remember. Towards the boobs or away from the boobs? I'm gonna look this up. Hold on one second. I'm only 99% sure I'm pressing these in the right direction. The original dress that I cut apart had the darts going towards the center, but that feels wrong to me. I'm gonna go with my gut here and go towards the side seam. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think it matters. There's also something called a sewing ham or a pressing ham, ironing ham. It's called a ham, usually packed with sawdust or something, and it has contours on it to help you sew rounded shapes like this. I wish I had one, but I do not. I'm just gonna use the edge of the ironing board and press the right sides out, and that'll have to do. Yeah, that looks a lot better already. Cool. As for the lining, the only thing I'm doing different is I am pressing the darts in the opposite direction. So the vertical ones are going towards the center, and the boob ones are going up. These two layers should be lining up, and I don't want it to be super bulky, so having both layers of fabric plus the doubled up layer of the darts, and I would like to not have that happen. I just spent so long explaining what we're not going to be doing for this project, and I'm just gonna explain what I am going to do rather than confuse the shit out of everybody. So I have bias tape, which means I can have raw edges and seams on the top edge of the bodice, because it's all going to get covered with this. So here's how I'm going to tackle assembling the bodice. Take the interfaced outer fabric and baste, so use your biggest stitch setting, the lining piece to the wrong side of the fabric. So these are going wrong sides together, so that interfacing is sandwiched between the two. And I'm going to do that for all 5 pieces. Okay, all of these pieces lined up fine, and I'm extra glad I am tackling this way with the bias tape and having the raw edges, and that I didn't piece the lining all together separately from the outer fabric and then attach those two, because I got to catch this and it's super fixable. I guess ideally, whenever you're making something like this, the lining and the outer fabric are going to be the same type of material, so that when you're pressing and ironing, it's all gonna work the same way, have the same kind of stretch. So what happened is when I put the interfacing on, something about ironing that to it made this stretch a little bit more this way. So it's a little shorter now, which I don't know how much I need to worry about that. I would prefer my tits to not be hanging out of this dress. Everything's gonna be fine. However, the lining is a lot shorter on both of these sides over here, where we're talking a solid inch on either side. I don't want to fuck with the darts. I'm gonna see how adding a panel to the center of this works out. I don't know if you can see this, but the lining darts are in probably 3/4 of an inch from the outer fabric darts. Let me math this out. I need to add 1.5 inches. If I do 1/4 inch seam allowance on each side of the center panel, but there's also 1/4 of an inch on the other one, so I need to do 2.5 inch strip. It's better to add more and then take away afterwards than cut a piece that's too narrow and then have to cut a whole nother piece that's too wide. So I'm gonna go with a 2.5 inch. At least I have a lot of this scrap fabric. I think I got it for about 1/4 at the thrift store. It's just a little remnant from something. Okay, my Frankensteining seems to have mostly done the trick. Now we can assemble all of the pieces together for the bodice. Something I made sure to do on these smaller pieces is make a note where the top is, because it's kind of a weird shape and I don't want it to get upside down by accident. Although, yes, the wider part is probably going to be at the top. Same thing with the very back piece. I have the top marked is basically a rectangle and I have zip here. So that means this straight edge of this guy is going to attach to the side here. When I cut the pieces out originally, these did not line up, but now that the dart has been taken in, it's narrowed that, and now these are the same height. Here's what that looks like right now. Also weird angle. You're on the charger because I am taking forever to film this video. Now I'm going to add those other panels. Again, following my notes to make sure they're oriented correctly. So yeah, same thing. Right sides together. Oh, and something I should mention before I serge it all off. You can see the square of stitching where I did the basting, and I made sure to keep that at a pretty narrow distance in from the edge. It's about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm working with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on everything. Okay, I figure this is a good point in the project to try and check the fit of everything. Now this fabric did have more stretch to it before I put the interfacing on, which I knew was going to happen. At the very least, I'm going to be adding some additional seam allowance to these pieces because that should probably make up the difference happening here. There's definitely a gap in the back, which is okay because I'm gonna add another like half panel of this rectangle right on the edge here, and that should do it, and then that'll get us to the zipper. Okay, so I was very proud of myself, and then now I'm annoyed with myself. So I made more rectangle pieces, but it was very gappy getting down to my waist because my bust is bigger than my waist. So then I took in some of this final seam after I had attached that block, and now it's probably just barely gonna fit, but I think I should still be able to get into it. Also, this is definitely something that had I had more fabric, I would have tried to fuck with. Pattern matching, where you try to line everything up. It's almost impossible to do with darts. I did also do a row of serging on these back center seams because that's where the zipper is gonna get attached. Okay, I'm gonna put the bodice down and stop fucking with it. And now it's time to work on the skirt. Now none of these pieces have interfacing or lining. They're just gonna hang. I'm just gonna take my side pattern piece because these are angled a little different. Okay, so the more angled side attaches at the side seam. Great. So I'm gonna attach the side panels of the skirt to the front on both sides, edges right sides together, straight stitch and then serge, keeping the back open for now. Okay, skirt panels are all attached. Beautiful. I did press the side seams towards the back, and now I'm going to do a row of serging along both of the back seams and then along the bottom, because the bottom is going to get hemmed by getting serged rolled over twice. If you don't have a serger, you just roll it over twice and it'll be fine. It's just a bigger pain in the ass, so that's why I do it this way. And then after this, fingers crossed, the skirt and the bodice are close enough width-wise that this is all going to fit together. I'm kind of scared about lining all of this up. Hold the side seams together and find the center front. Line those up right sides together. Oh, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I just got this like cold chill of panic that I fucked something up, and that's never indicative of something good. Oh, there's so much more to this. Fuck. So, how to tackle this. This is not gonna stretch that much. Was it a mistake interfacing all of this? Also, almost definitely the skirt pieces stretched out and warped as I was pressing it. So do I line this up here and then take in the side seam until it lines up? Yeah, maybe this is the move. Okay. It's not the end of the world, but I am annoyed at this fabric. I really shouldn't have picked this to work with. So what I'm gonna do is keep the center points lined up. I'm gonna line up the edges, like the back seam pieces. Okay, and then I'm gonna find the side seam of the bodice, use that as my marker, and smooth out the skirt from the center and the edge and work my way towards that side seam. And then that should help me figure out my excess, because ideally the side seams would line up. I just need to take it in this little bit at the waist. That's actually not as bad as I was expecting it. So I'm just gonna mark it with a pin right there. And I don't need to take in the entire skirt. I can just taper it out. So it'll be a pretty gradual taper, and then I'll just meet up with the original side seam, and I'll repeat that on both sides. Okay, this is how it's all looking. I think once I have the zipper installed and it's actually like holding itself together, it will stay on me okay. The way this is looking is so good. So if this ends up in my Etsy shop, I'm not going to be mad about it. So to install the zipper, I'm gonna make sure all of this is actually even. Okay. Also good to make sure the skirt pieces also line up along the edge. I'm going to take the zipper I have. This is a 14-inch one, I believe. Just want to make sure it's going to cover the length of the bodice and then down into the waist a little bit, because there'll be more room the further down the skirt you get, but especially the chest and waist tends to be the snuggest parts. And then I'm going to measure down from where these little dudes are. Measure down to where this metal bit is. I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to sew from the bottom of the skirt up to that mark, right sides together. You can, if you're new to installing zippers, do a basting stitch, so that longest stitch setting on your machine again. Or, I mean, you can also hand baste it together. For the rest of the length where the zipper is actually going to go, I just don't do that anymore. What I am going to do, and this is going to be a bitch with this fabric, oh, so much regret. We're going to do a better version sometime. Press the seams open all the way up, and then when I get past the part that I stitched, I'm just going to make sure it's all going over 1/4 inch on either side, as if it had been stitched already and then pressed open. Which again, if you just want to baste it and not listen to whatever drivel I'm spewing right now, just press the seams open all the way up, and then you'll have to unpick the basting afterwards. Hear him snoring? I fucking love that dog. If you're new here, this is Bert, my recent rescue adoption, and he's the best. Okay, this is what I meant by pressing it as if you had the seam going. Okay, so I'm going to take my zipper. The side with the pull facing out, we're calling the right side. I'm going to put this right sides together, lining up this edge with this edge. I'm lining up the top of this. You're going to need to move the zipper pull down with that metal bit. And actually, I'm going to shift the metal bit up a little bit past that. I'm going to pin a bunch, keeping it right sides together all the way down. Being mindful of the zipper head when you're actually sewing this. So you're probably going to have to move it up or down around where you're sewing. And for me, pinning the first side is not nearly as important as pinning the second side, because that's where things can get shifted and wonky. But this is what it looks like right now. And obviously I'm just going to end the stitching where the zipper is ending. So just going to do a straight stitch along here. Don't touch the bottom yet. Okay, so that is attached right sides together, stopping right down here. So next, we're going to take the other side of the zipper tape, the right sides, and line it up with the right sides of the other side of the dress. Now this is where you need to pin more. Not enough pins for this part. If I'm gonna have an issue with a zipper, this is where I have the issue. One very important part, other than the top to make sure is even, is line up, not side seam, but waist seam, I guess. Make sure that these are at the same height. So I fucked that up before, and oh god, it drives me nuts. And yeah, just continue down to the bottom of the zipper. I'm especially being cautious of the skirt part because that doesn't have the interfacing and is getting more wobbly, or can get more wobbly. We're going to stitch that side now. Again, be wary of the zipper head, and it's gonna be great. We're doing great. Yep. So the zipper is in. You could stop here if you want to. Oh, I have this angled very low. There we go. Hi. You can stop there if you want, but there is still some top stitching to do, and that's gonna make it stick out a little less. So I don't really pin when I go to do the top stitching. I kind of mush the fabric just a little bit over. Once I'm done stitching, they're gonna meet in the middle and kind of smooch a bit. Not overlap or anything, and it's such a small amount, but that's part of why I ironed before, so it's gonna want to naturally fall right there. So I'm gonna go all the way down one side, do a 90-degree turn, go across the bottom here, make sure I'm not hitting the metal bit at the bottom, do another 90-degree turn, and come all the way back up. And also, Look at how well the waist seams line up. Thank goodness. Oh my god, look at that zipper. I'm so proud of it. I'm genuinely really pumped about how that came out. Once I attach the bias tape, I will decide if I'm going to do a little latch at the top. I think just having the zipper stop there is going to be fine. So I'll probably be stitching these little flappy bits down. Also, I've never used bias tape like this, so I don't know if I was supposed to add that before the zipper, but I thought it would give a nice finished edge. Okay, so I bought some pre-made bias tape. It's not super hard to make, but it was sitting right there and it was like $1.50, so I figured I'd save myself the headache. We'll make bias tape together some other time. I'm gonna open it up. It's usually folded in on itself twice, so you get nice finished edges everywhere. Fold it back over, so now this end has a finished edge. I'm gonna fold the zipper tape back like this. Actually, I should stitch that down first. Okay, so see, that's tucked out of the way now. Okay, back to what I was doing with the bias tape. Fold it in on itself just a bit, just like 1/4 inch, and then just like slide it over the raw edge. I should actually start on the other end. Oh, Bert is trying to steal the other end of the bias tape. Okay, yeah, like this. And then as I'm going, I'm gonna stitch pretty close to this edge. I'm gonna keep an eye and make sure it's catching this lower edge on the other side of the bias tape so that it's making a full like sleeve around both sides. So say here's the raw fabric edge and here is the bias tape just coming to like wrap around. Like a little hat. I don't know. I've lost the metaphor. Oh man, I really like that at the top. What a good accent. Okay, the only thing left is hemming the bottom. Like I said, I serged the very bottom edge. I'm just gonna fold it in once and then a second time, and I'm gonna top stitch along this edge here. Okay, hi, yes, I'm like spilling out a little bit over the top, but things are covered at least. It definitely looks too small. I just took some photos to get a really good gauge on the whole thing and how it moved, and it just looks too small. It's also like it's sitting a little too low. I think had I had that extra little bit, if it didn't warp the way it did, it would be sitting up better and would also look less small that way, where yeah, it fits around. The more I wear it, I think it's starting to like stretch out a little bit, and it is comfortable moving around and like breathing and everything. Having this looks finished. I had initially wanted to add straps, but this shit isn't going anywhere. I already have a very broad chest, so things look a little, I don't want to say weird. It's part of why I got, everything's mirrored. It's part of why I got my shoulder tattoo, is because I've always been very self-conscious about my broad shoulders, and this makes me not think about how my body shape looks when my shoulders are out in a tank top or something, but I get excited to show off my artwork when I have this out, so that's a big factor. But that it's not a flattering dress on me, so this is especially frustrating to look at right now. I do really like where it's hitting. This is like my ideal length. That was something I loved about the original dress. It wasn't too short on me for fucking once. I like the way this fabric is stiff enough. It's kind of keeping these neat little waves and everything in it, but it's just depending on how you move it around, it kind of holds the shape. So I do love how this dress looks, just not on my body. Anyways, that was an adventure. I am so glad with how it came out, other than me just making it a little too small, and that's entirely my fault. I think it was gonna not fit weird, not just the width, like I know I took it in a little more than I probably should have, but that height bit, the way it warped really fucked me up. So something to keep a better eye on next time. I think maybe I did learn that I'll just put interfacing on the fabric ahead of time, like cut out the size piece I need out of the interfacing, iron it onto the fabric, and then whatever the fabric's gonna do, it's gonna do then, and then I can cut out the interfacing and work with it from there, because I think not having anything holding it together, it's just wonky and bonkers and difficult, just difficult. Plus it didn't want to press very well, and that's frustrating when you're doing a fitted bodice like that, because it looks so much nicer. Even the lining looked so much nicer on the darts and everything. All things to learn. I don't know if this was actually educational to you or not, watching me troubleshoot all of this, but I'm very gratified having this dress done. I didn't really feel like giving up at any point. I was, I don't know, maybe just well rested enough to tackle this today, where I think maybe some of the hiccups would have thrown me if I was in a worse mood at the beginning of this. Considering the mistake traps I've fallen into doing other projects, this didn't really fuck me up that much. Like I said, I'm gonna list that in my Etsy shop. I'm about to post a picture of the dress on my regular Instagram, maybe also my business Instagram once I make the Etsy listing. So if you have any interest in keeping up with my secondhand September posts, my intention is to do one every day of an outfit I've either thrifted, also things that I have updated but kept most of the garment together, and things I made entirely from scratch, where I was basically using the original garment as fabric for the next thing and not just altering the already existing garment. I love doing all of it. Regular thrifting is fun. If you find something that fits you perfect and looks how you want it to look and you love wearing it, that is the most exciting thing, because you're also getting it for almost no money. But when I get to put my own little creative spin on things, that's also very gratifying to wear. So all of it. I'm into all of it. Anyways, if there's other stuff I end up posting on my Etsy, keep an eye on my business Instagram, so that's Sewing Nerd Studios. And my regular one is holycrappitsjo. I also have a Twitter where those get linked to, so if there's one you use more than the other, feel free to follow both of them. I'm also very excited to see other people's posts. It seems like it's more targeted towards people going thrift shopping, but I know there's at least one account I started following recently called Steal and Stitch, I believe, where they do a bunch of really fun alterations and visible mending and stuff, and I really like their attitude about things, so I'm excited to see other people's posts. It's also giving me ideas for what to do for Maketober, because I'm not a two-dimensional artist, so participating in Inktober feels a little weird, though I know I'm still in the spirit of it, because you're doing your creative thing every day for a month. So I really like that. I think it was last year or the year before I did a costume I had made myself every day of October, and I think I just tagged it Maketober. So I'd like to do something similar this year. I need to plan it out a little more. Okay, I'm gonna go, because that took longer than I expected. I thought I'd be done by 10 or 11 this morning, and it's about 1, and that seems to always happen. So I'm going to eat something, because I have not had breakfast yet, and I guess we're into lunchtime, and this is probably going up Saturday. So if you want to see my Hogwarts robes video, oh boy, yeah, now that I've said that, I just got very hungry. Isn't that funny how it's fine until you think about it, and then you're like, fuck, I haven't eaten in days. I'm gonna go eat some food. I will see you all back here on Wednesday with another video. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, I'm gonna do that before I find a different way to repeat myself. I'm just a fickle bitch, I guess.